I was chopping onions when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. At first, I almost ignored it, probably another spam call, but something in me decided to answer. A polite woman's voice came through, introducing herself from a collections agency. She asked if I could pass along a message to my husband, Daniel, that his payment for the apartment on Brookside Avenue was overdue. My hand froze mid-air. The knife hovered above the cutting board as if the air had turned to glue. I asked her slowly, "I'm sorry, what apartment?" My voice was even, but inside, a wave of heat rushed up my neck. She didn't hesitate, as if I already knew, casually adding that the unit was in another woman's name, but Daniel was the listed payer. Every word she spoke seemed to stretch time, making the kitchen feel smaller, the air thicker. I thanked her, my voice on autopilot, and hung up. The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful, it was deafening. I stood there, phone still in my hand, my mind trying to race ahead while my body felt like it was made of stone. Something inside me knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. And just like that, the ground beneath my life began to shift. The smell of dinner still hung in the air, but I couldn't taste or smell a thing anymore. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure it could be heard over the faint sizzle of the pan. I set the knife down, slowly, as if any sudden movement might shatter the thin thread holding me together. Brookside Avenue. I'd never heard Daniel mention that street, not once in all our years together. My mind started flipping through the mental Rolodex of our life. Birthdays, bills, little routines, looking for something, anything, that made this make sense. But nothing did. Instead, pieces of a different puzzle began to fall into place. The late nights at work. The times he came home smelling like a different brand of soap than we kept here. Cash withdrawals that never made it into our household budget. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge like it might anchor me. I didn't cry, not yet. The tears were there, pressing behind my eyes, but a sharper emotion was cutting through the fog, curiosity laced with dread. I needed to know more, and deep down, I already knew that whatever I found, there would be no unknowing it. I walked over to the table and sat down, my phone resting in front of me like it held a ticking bomb. My dinner was still cooking, but the sound of it didn't pull me back. Nothing could. I replayed the woman's voice in my head, every casual syllable that had just detonated my evening. Another woman's name, an apartment he was paying for. The words circled me like vultures, picking at the edges of my trust. I thought about calling him right then, demanding an explanation. But something in me whispered, "Wait." It wasn't fear, it was instinct. If Daniel had managed to keep something this big from me, then he had probably rehearsed the lies he'd use if I ever got too close to the truth. I wouldn't give him that chance, not yet. I turned off the stove, letting the food sit in the pan, untouched. My appetite was gone, replaced by a slow, calculated hum in the back of my mind. If there was another address in his life, I was going to find it, and when I did, he wouldn't see me coming. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the name of that street like it was burned into my mind, Brookside Avenue. By morning, the sharp ache in my chest had shifted into a quiet, steady determination. Over coffee, I started retracing the last few months in my head, pulling on threads I'd ignored before. Daniel's late meetings that always seemed to pop up last minute, the way he'd sometimes come home freshly showered, his hair still damp, carrying a faint trace of cologne we didn't own. I'd chalked it up to stress, maybe even his way of blowing off steam after work, but now, those explanations felt laughably thin, like paper umbrellas in a hurricane. I opened our joint account statements on my laptop, scrolling with a hand that trembled despite my best effort to stay calm. That's when I saw them, monthly transfers, each for the same amount, and each one matching the figure the collections agent had mentioned. My heart sank, but my mind sharpened. This wasn't a single mistake or a forgotten bill. This was routine, planned, maintained, and that meant there was a whole life, neatly hidden, existing alongside mine. I typed the address into the search bar, my pulse thudding in my ears. In seconds, the screen filled with glossy images, a luxury apartment complex with glass balconies, manicured gardens, and a lobby that looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel. I stared at the photos, my mouth dry. This wasn't some shabby secret tucked away in the shadows. This was deliberate, indulgent. I imagined Daniel there, laughing, pouring wine, maybe cooking dinner in that sleek kitchen for someone who wasn't me. The thought didn't just sting, it burned. I zoomed in on the building, memorizing every detail, from the curved awnings to the placement of the front entrance. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. My mind started cataloging every suspicious moment I'd brushed off. The weekends he insisted on, catching up on work, alone. The unexplained gas receipts from a part of town we never visited. The sudden bursts of generosity toward himself, new clothes, upgraded electronics that didn't seem to match his usual habits. And just like that, the pieces locked together. He wasn't just visiting this place, he was keeping it. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. The truth had settled in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake off. This wasn't a fling in the shadows. It was a second life, one he'd built with care and money that was supposed to be ours. And somewhere inside that polished building was the woman he'd chosen to share it with. I thought about confronting him right away, but the same voice that stopped me the night before spoke again, low, steady, certain. Not yet. I needed proof, not just for me, but for the moment when his mask would finally crack. I wanted him to see that I knew everything. I glanced at the clock. If I timed it right, I could be near Brookside Avenue when he left work. My stomach twisted at the thought, but there was no turning back now. Whatever I found next, I would carry it straight into the heart of what came after. The next evening, I parked my car a block away from the Brookside building, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. The place was even more impressive in person. Glass panels catching the fading sunlight, polished stone steps leading to a lobby that glowed like it was welcoming royalty. I kept my head low, watching the entrance, every nerve in my body tuned to the sound of footsteps. It didn't take long. Daniel appeared, strolling toward the building like he belonged there, because he did, but he wasn't alone. A young woman walked beside him, her hand brushing his arm as they laughed over something I couldn't hear. She carried a bag of groceries, and he had another in his free hand. My throat tightened. This wasn't the hurried, guilty energy of an affair hidden in the dark. This was domestic, comfortable. I grabbed my phone and snapped photo after photo, the clicks sounding too loud in the silence of my car. Each shot felt like a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. And still, I couldn't look away. Not yet. Not until I'd seen enough to know exactly how deep his betrayal went. I stayed there, engine off, watching them disappear through the glass doors. My reflection in the windshield looked like someone I barely recognized, jaw tight, eyes sharp, not a trace of the woman who used to wait up for him with dinner in the oven. Minutes passed before I saw them again, this time through the warm light of a second-floor window. He moved around the kitchen with ease, unpacking groceries while she poured wine. They were laughing, close, like a scene straight out of a life that was supposed to be mine. I lifted my phone again, this time recording a video. Every movement, every smile, every brush of their hands was captured, time-stamped, undeniable. This wasn't for revenge alone, it was insurance. I wanted every scrap of proof in my corner before the day I'd use it. When the blinds finally closed, I sank deeper into my seat. I could leave, but my instincts told me this wasn't a one-time visit. If I came back, I'd catch them again. And when I did, I'd have enough evidence to strip the lies from his mouth before he even opened it. Over the next week, I became a quiet shadow in Daniel's world. While he thought I was at home, I was slipping into parking lots, trailing just far enough behind to avoid suspicion. Every day, the pattern repeated. The same detour after work, the same building, the same woman waiting for him with a smile. My phone's gallery swelled with photos, videos, and screenshots of bank statements I'd pulled from our accounts late at night. I dug deeper. Call logs, receipts crumpled in his jacket pockets, even a pair of wine glasses on a receipt from the store near Brookside. Each piece added to the portrait of a man who had mastered the art of living two lives, and each piece hardened something inside me that I didn't know could turn to stone. When I finally sat in a quiet office across from a divorce lawyer, The weight I'd been carrying began to shift. She listened, nodded, and told me exactly how to protect myself. Together, we built a plan, one that would leave no loose ends, no room for him to twist the truth. The only thing left now was timing, and when the moment came, he wouldn't see it coming until it was already over. It was late evening when I heard his car pull into the driveway. I was already at the dining table, my lawyer sitting beside me, a neat folder spread open between us. The house was quiet, too quiet, except for the sound of the front door unlocking. Daniel stepped in, briefcase in hand, wearing that end-of-the-day half-smile he used to save for me. The smile faltered the second his eyes landed on us. "Sit down, Daniel," I said, my voice calm, steady, almost gentle, but with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. He didn't move at first, just stood there like someone had hit pause. My lawyer gestured toward the chair across from us. Slowly, he set his briefcase down and sat. The folder between us was a minefield. Photos, bank statements, lease agreements, receipts, every secret he'd thought was safe. I slid the first photo toward him, the one of him carrying groceries beside her. His hand twitched toward the picture, but he didn't pick it up. His eyes stayed on me, searching for some trace of mercy that wasn't there anymore. "You've been paying for an apartment on Brookside Avenue," I said, each word deliberate, leaving no space for him to twist them. He opened his mouth, but before he could spin the first lie, my lawyer slid a stack of papers in front of him. "These are divorce papers," she said smoothly. "Vanessa will be keeping the house and her share of the assets. You have 30 days to vacate." His face drained of color, the bravado he usually wore crumbling in real time. "It's not what you think," he started, the old performance kicking in, but I leaned forward, cutting through his script before it could take shape. "You gave another woman a home," I said, my tone as cold as the truth I was handing him. "Now you can go live in it." He shifted in his seat, the air around him thick with the weight of everything he couldn't talk his way out of. The papers sat untouched between us, but the decision had already been made. This wasn't a negotiation, it was the verdict. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Daniel's eyes darted between me, the lawyer, and the pile of evidence. Like maybe if he stared long enough, it would all rearrange itself into something less damning. But nothing moved, nothing softened. The silence wasn't an invitation for him to explain. It was the sound of a door closing for good. I could see the realization settle over him. This wasn't a fight he could win. Every receipt, every transfer, every photograph was a brick in the wall between us, and I was done climbing over it to reach him. My lawyer began outlining the next steps in clipped professional tones, but I kept my eyes on him, steady and unflinching. When we finally stood, I gathered the folder and pushed my chair back. "You'll find everything you need in that stack," I said, nodding toward the papers. "Don't drag your feet, Daniel. The clock's already ticking." I walked away before he could answer, leaving him in the quiet wreckage of his own making. The days that followed felt like stepping out of a storm into clean, still air. I froze our joint accounts before he had the chance to siphon off a single penny. My lawyer moved quickly, and every time I signed a paper, I felt another weight slide off my shoulders. Daniel, on the other hand, struggled to keep up with the apartment payments on his own. Within weeks, the Brookside address that had once been his little sanctuary slipped right through his fingers. Word of the affair spread faster than I expected. Friends, family, people who had once smiled at him with easy trust, now looked at him with a mix of pity and disappointment. It wasn't just the marriage that was over. The image he'd built for himself had cracked wide open, and there was no fixing it. I kept my focus forward. Every choice I made, every box I unpacked was for me. This was my clean slate, and I wasn't about to waste it looking over my shoulder. I threw myself into making the house mine in a way it had never been before. New paint on the walls, furniture that felt warm and inviting, curtains that let the sunlight spill across the floor. I sold the things that carried his shadow and replaced them with pieces that felt like me, strong, bright, unapologetic. Every small change was a quiet declaration. This is my home now, and it doesn't answer to him. Some mornings, I'd wake up expecting the ache in my chest to return, but instead I felt something lighter. Peace, maybe. Freedom, definitely. I started filling my days with things I'd set aside for years: coffee with friends, reading in the afternoons, taking walks just because I could. The space that had once been heavy with secrets now felt open, breathing, alive. And so was I. One Saturday morning, I sat in my freshly redecorated living room, sunlight pouring through the new linen curtains. The air smelled faintly of coffee and fresh flowers from the market down the street. I curled up in my favorite chair, a mug warming my hands, and took a slow sip. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. There were no late-night excuses, no hidden bank transfers, no quiet suspicions gnawing at the edges of my mind. Daniel had tried to build a life behind my back, brick by brick, thinking I'd never see it. But I had built something better, right here in the open, where nothing and no one could touch it. The walls felt stronger, not because they kept someone out, but because they finally felt like they belonged to me. I smiled into my coffee, not the polite smile I'd worn for years, but one that came from deep inside. He had lost his apartment, his secrets, his safety net. I had gained something far more valuable: myself.